I'm Sir Flowbojan Thunderhammer.
And I'm Teflon Frosthammer.
And I'm Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this
is
WAK.
If Amtgard knighthood means anything, you can't knife a motherfucker and keep it.
And the thing that people need to understand essentially about arts and sciences events is that your scores don't matter.
Do you want a black phoenix or a white phoenix?
Jeez, language, man. We're on
right.
a freaking podcast, for fuck's sake.
Mind-blowing experience, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to WAK, where we discuss topics important to the Amtgard community at large and talk with interesting people from around the foam fighting world. This week, we have on Surfish, and Surfish, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so to get things rolling, same question we start every show with. Tell us how you got into Amtgard or foam fighting in general, if you had something before Amtgard.
I did not have anything before Amtgard. I came in my first year of college. Sir Thad, this is like the area of Texas that he moved to. So Sir Thad came to my college campus in San Marcos, Texas, and was out at the, it was called the Quad. And they were showing like, oh, you can get into the chess club. You can get into the running like Naruto through the open fields of Texas club, or you can do Amtgard. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like fun. And I'm a huge ass nerd. And so I was like, I'll do that. And that's exactly how I started playing. And it all went downhill from there.
Okay, so first off, I believe that the running through the fields of Texas like Naruto Club is a real thing.
Wasn't that a thing on Facebook for a while? It was like Naruto run at Area 51. They can't stop all of us or something.
Yeah, they did that.
Yeah, okay. Was it in relation to that? No, it would have to have been before that.
No, Naruto runners are a special kind of internet breed.
Oh man, I got to see one of these clubs. Okay, so I take it then that you started in Texas. Was that CK Wetlands, or I think there's a couple of
Emerald Hills
in Texas?
Golden Plains.
It's the CK.
CK.
Mm-hmm.
So that time in the CK, what year was this? This would have been
2014.
Okay, so just around 8 years ago. So what was going on in the in CK at that time?
I think Cloubus was king, and we had. I'm really having to dig here. Cloubus was king. Sir Aeolus had just been knighted the reign previous, and I don't know. There was a lot of jungle juice involved in those days at those events.
Yep.
So what you learn about this through college, but what kind of gets you hooked? Everybody has something that's kind of their hook. What was yours?
I really liked having a second family that I could go to, like having. I did a slash and burn technique with all of my high school friends. I completely got rid of all of those bridges. Small town didn't really benefit me once I went to college. A lot of people who didn't want their lives to improve, and I just didn't want to hang around that. And when I started doing Amtgard, I started meeting people who were either older or the same age, and I've had a lot of opportunities through Amtgard, and it became a second family who, no matter what, I mean, they see me fucking nerdiest. I run around a field in like a dress and a flower crown and swing a sword at someone and say magic missile, and it works. So they accept me at my rawest, and that's all I can ask for, and it's what I love.
Yeah, we hear that so much that I think that it was just last week's episode we were talking about the fact that everybody just wants somewhere to belong.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know? I mean, the community is what keeps me around, to be honest. When I came back, that was part of it, like a large part of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I don't know that I did a full slash and burn upon, sort of going to college and everything else, but I certainly have damn this microphone. I have a significant reduction in people that I still talk to from that time. There's only like one or two people that I sincerely still interact with from high school. And the difference I found when going to Amtgard was that the the amount of hobbies and the amount of expansion just in things I was exposed to was drastically different than those people I had been, to high school with and everything else. So it was hugely beneficial for me to introduce myself and become a part of, this way bigger community. I never would have known about leatherworking as a thing if I had not done Amthgard and all of its, myriad applications. So that's actually a cool way to do it, even if it can be kind of painful.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't have your wallet right now.
I don't have my wallet right now. Oh, shit.
Is it over at Jeff's?
It's either at Jeff's or in my car. It's fine. I'm not worried about it.
Okay, so you are Sir Fish.
Mm-hmm.
You are a knight of?
The Serpent.
And when did you get your belt?
Just this March at Spring War.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So, many different paths to Serpent, unlike a lot of our belts. What was your chosen path? That wasn't a dig at the belt. Okay, it was a little bit of a dig at the belts.
For Serpent, I didn't want to get it just by doing one thing, and I have been outspoken, at least in the CK, of my frustration with people who are kind of just one-trick ponies, and they didn't start by, I drew a stick figure for my first one, and then I drew 2 stick figures for my second. It was more of a, I did nothing but do scrolls for the whole kingdom, and I got my belt from it in a year. And it's okay, cool, but diversity. And so I got it mostly through doing 2-dimensional art. And then the last, I guess everything else, because I got my 9, 10, and master during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything else was just scrolls and online entries and stuff like that. But it was all through art. My mom was an art teacher, and so I already was predisposed to being good at creation.
Mm-hmm.
So I immediately went toward Serpent belt.
Gotcha.
That's cool. I can see some of the artwork behind you. I'm digging the Monstera leaf and everything else. It's nice.
Yeah.
So my question then is, so you went through 2D art, and like you said, you prefer people who do, sort of multiple different things within a focus to get there. Is there any merit to the PhD approach, right? Like PhDs get really focused on one specific area. So, for example, like belts or scrolls, just doing the one singular thing, you think there's no merit to that, or is there just a preferential thing?
I guess there's merit to it in a matter of showing improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So if you come into the game full on blasting out amazing pieces, where's the ceiling? What are you having to push yourself to break through? Sir Diego's my knight, and I would always talk with him about it, and I was like, I don't get how people are just satisfied with doing the one thing. You could do a belt where all you did was use the little line carver on the side, and then you paint that, you make it look real pretty, it's really fine and all that jazz. And then the next one you could put a stamp on it, and then the next one after that you could carve something. And so long as you're showing that improvement, I feel like that's more Serpent belty than just, I'm really good at this one thing and I only do this one thing.
That's fair. I can understand that. It's sort of mastery through knowing every part of the craft, right? Instead of just a singular part. I can understand that.
Yeah, it's kind of like with sword belts and stuff. You don't. It'd have to be a damn good spin shot, but you don't see warlords only doing spin shots. They don't just walk out there like Beyblades, and so you can't really expect someone who only goes right to suddenly get their belt because they're amazing and flawless and everything at that.
Right.
It's the saying from Bruce Lee. I'd rather fight someone who did one kick 10,000 times than who did 10,000 kicks one time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I can get behind that. I can kind of understand wanting people to improve and that sort of thing. But you said, somebody who comes in who's already astounding. Let's say somebody comes in and they're just they're a recognized artist, right? They have some, previous professional work. Where does the ceiling go for where do you expect the ceiling to be for someone like that if they come in already at a high level? Just do something different entirely, or
I would say probably teaching.
Fair. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Giving back, doing that.
Yeah, that's kind of how I've always looked at the awards as well. Like, it is a personal award, but like your product or your fighting or whatever bleeds into the community, so it is like a give back kind of aspect to it. So
Also, I was definitely that person making stick figures.
yeah, oh, me too.
I can't.
Do you remember when Sarah entered a coloring book page to get
I-
quals for 1 year?
I do, and I also remember that it passed.
Yeah.
God bless her.
Old Amp Guard.
Yeah.
How you were.
So okay, so then teaching is an interesting aspect. We've asked a lot of knights this before, and it's, what do you think a knight should do? Do you think a knight should teach, or is there something else that a knight should do, in combination with that contributes back?
Oh boy. I on the CK Knights list to lift the veil, but for a second, I recently made a long post about, I think, and I don't know, y'all's opinions on this. And personally, I mean, I benefited from what happened, but the last couple of reigns within the CK, there's been a ton of knightings, and it's gotten to the point where Barbie, I don't know her in-game name, but she's an awesome person. Barbie was knighted, and she phrased it as she felt that her knighting was just another award with how many things were given out. And a lot of people are still, rearing and ready to go to knight everybody who's ever gotten a masterhood. And like the second they get that masterhood, boom, let's go ahead and slap that white belt on them. But in my opinion, I feel like they're two completely separate things. And I feel like knights are, in the classic sense, supposed to be mentors, because you take on an underbelt, you take on a squire, a man-at-arms, a page. Not many people take on pages anymore, but it is what it is. You take on one of these underbelts and you teach them, and you bring them up, and you mentor them, or you guide them, or you're just their good friend that they can talk to, and you bring them to a point in the game where they are put in that same position to start giving back, to start leading and taking up the torch, so to say. Versus masterhoods that are, it's kind of the greediness of the belt, or the greediness of the path. Like, I got my masterhood because I am the master. And no one liked my phrasing of that, but it is what it is.
I mean, I can understand it, right? The masterhood is you've demonstrated the skill. The knighthood is you've demonstrated the ability to give back in some way. We actually had a similar discussion about this on the way to an event. Flo and I think, Jeff, you rode with Lexi. But it was essentially, what is a knightly behavior, and I think we termed it as being like the ability to create more knights. Your ability to give something back and give people more steps to get to that same path that you went on. So I don't know that they're exactly meshed together. I don't know that that's the exact same line of thought, but they're similar in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
Very similar, I think, to Lexi's line of thinking, that the difference. But Lexi is a master garber, and was offered her belt and didn't take it. She did not want to take, or she did not want to do some of the things that she feels are the virtues that separate knight from masterhood. Right? She didn't want to be. She loves teaching. She loves like making hats with us and doing things like that. But I don't think she wants to sit down in front of a room full of 50 people and make hats. That's not her, right? I don't want to speak for her, but so she is very, very comfortable with her masterhood and never wants to seek knighthood. And I feel like it's for reasons that are very similar to what you've described. So it's just to everyone out there who doesn't have a belt right now and is kind of staring up, saying this is something that I really want to do, know that the belt itself isn't the only path. That was really the point I was trying to express there, that there's a lot of differing opinions on that, and you don't have to fall in the I have to get the belt. Lexi's one of the most respected garbers in our kingdom, just one of the most respected crafters in our kingdom, and she doesn't have her belt.
True.
And doesn't want it.
So what's your opinion on kind of time to knighthood? I know you had mentioned people who just jump up within a year and they've sort of gotten the belt. Do you have is there a required amount of time in that you think designates someone as being worthy, or can somebody get to it in a year and you think it's justifiable?
Only people who've played the game for 5+. No, I'm kidding. 30 years. No. I think that people should be able to progress at whatever skill that they show and how much they give back. Like, if uh, when I joined, I thought I was going to have an easy ass time because I was already an artist. I was already making artwork. People were already paying me for my commissions. But what I didn't realize was that because I hate entering things into Dragon Master, into ANS competitions, all of that. I hate write-ups. I hate people judging my artwork without me being able to like, hey, I did it this way because of this, blah, blah, blah. I hate that whole thing. And I also hate that you have people who have never seen a goddamn potter's wheel ever before, and yet you throw this like 2-foot tall goblet and someone's just like, I don't like the color. It's like, well, the color came out that way because of this, that, and another. But, your opinion is the only thing that's keeping me from my next fucking award.
Right.
So
Also,
I hate that.
You drew your line in the sand is the color that the artist chose. I just want to pause on that for a moment. I also feel like listening. Godric, I know that you're going to be listening to this. You do not need to develop a tournament that will work within the confines of what Fish is describing. It will be okay, Godric.
Just let me judge. I can't even see the color. It's fine.
That's true. He's colorblind.
Yeah, no, but like I think that people should be able to achieve it at their own pace, whether that takes 8 years like it took me, whether that takes 4 years, 1 year, 2 months, however. I feel like it should be up to the pace that they want to take. I am most frustrated with, though, that there's a lot of, I'm trying to say as clean as possible because I am a very raunchy person.
We have an explicit rating.
I
Someone
once
says fuck
referred
in
to
our interview.
I once referred to
There's-
something as an arts and sciences glory hole. You're
Yeah,
good.
you can't
no,
really do too
there's-
bad.
I mean, there's just so much circle jerking when it comes to all of it, and
Yes.
you end up like standing there watching everybody else have fun and get awarded, and your name is never called for 3 reigns to go up there, kneel in front of the king, and get something handed to you. Like, and so you start pushing harder, or you start being like, hey, I can take a scroll. Hey, let me make that scroll for you. Hey, you need a belt? I'll make you a belt. You start giving back to the community so much, and you just get your 7th, or you just get your 5th. And I think that makes it all a whole lot harder. And so a lot of real life art stuff, and this is all based off of like Serpent Belt.
Right.
A lot of real life art stuff comes into play when you actually start trying to climb the ladders in the game, is that you have to be like, hey, I made art too, and it's real pretty.
Yeah.
Do you guys like it? I think you should like it. I think I fucking deserve my 7th fucking dragon for this. And you really have to get super aggressive and defensive with what you think that you deserve and what you do deserve.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so I hope Sir Kazan doesn't mind me saying this on air, but I remember Sir Kazan having a conversation with us a little while back where he said, I don't care if you put in an award for yourself, because you either have earned the award or you haven't.
Yeah.
Right? Who turns in the recommendation? He was king at the time. He was monarch at the time. And so he's saying, as monarch, I do not care, because either you are going to have, and I'm still going to go through the exact same steps to verify this or not. I'm going to contact people at your park. I'm going to contact people that you've been, turning in stuff in tournaments or competing in tournaments in, and do all of those steps, no matter who turns it in. So what does it matter if you're recommending yourself? But everything that you said there ties so heavily back into something that we should pre-record it onto one of our buttons over there, but you have to be cheerleaders for your friends. I know that people have different opinions on awards in our game, and how and when and where they should be applied, but they are a motivator. No one can deny that. And if you are not shouting out when some of your friends are doing stuff, then there's a chance that it's going to go unheard. And Fish, you in particular, have seen kind of a longer side of it too, because you're in a very old kingdom. And one of the unfortunate side effects of being in very old kingdoms in our game is that you have an enormous history of people there that said, I had to work harder than this to get mine. You have an
You look like you were raring batch to punch somebody.
No, don't even get me started there.
you have an enormous history as well of people that are in not doing this in a mean way, not doing this in a way that is, they're not trying to hurt anyone or hurt their feelings or anything like that. But even if they don't hold that view, oftentimes in old kingdoms, a lot of your Serpent Knights and your experienced artisans are the ones that are judging. And there's some pre-baked in bias that can go into...
you mean quality control.
Yeah, that can go into that too. And you kind of mentioned this earlier too with, you were using, a pottery wheel as an example. But I don't know anything about chainmail. I have been a judge before where I was asked to judge chainmail. And I asked if I could pull in people who were more experienced with chainmail. And the people that were running it allowed me to do that. But I've also seen places where they said, no, absolutely not. That would shake the foundation of your judging scale, right? And so that is kind of a very long way of saying that this is a people problem as much as it is anything else. And I am presenting it in a light where these people want you to be the best you can and want to do really good for you, but there's still these things that you have to face. And that's why I say you have to hype your friends. You have to go out and do that, because there's all of these other factors that may pull in that are causing them to maybe not get that recommendation that they should, when anyone else looking at that piece is going to say, that's amazing. That's definitely worth a 6th or 7th or whatever.
Yeah, I had a similar experience when Vidalia offered to judge an ANS thing, and it was online, so it was all submitted pictures, and she's like, I have no idea what I've gotten myself into. I don't know how to make it. This is very early on, when she had first started playing. She's like, I don't know how to judge a belt. I don't know how to judge tunic. I don't know how to judge anything. Can you look at these with me and tell me? And I didn't look at the player. I didn't look at anything. I would look at the piece of work and say, okay, here's what's wrong with it. Here's what I like about it. Here's what they did well. Here's what they could have improved on. I would give this person an X owl or an X garber or whatever. And then I would let her handle the rest, because I didn't want to know whose work I was judging or anything like that. But basically, like, informing the process on, like, this is where I think this level of work is at. So, I mean, calling in outside people seems like a no-brainer. It's weird that people wouldn't allow that, but I guess I can see it from the other side, too, of, like, I don't want them to impact your decision.
I want to ask you a question, Fish, because you mentioned being able to sit down and say, they don't understand the process that went into it and stuff like that. We've talked on the show before about judging formats that are more open, something where perhaps the person, puts the piece down in front of the judges and says, hi, my name is Flo. I am turning in this water bottle. I made it in the USA. And you get a chance to...
Did you have to check?
He did.
Yeah. I don't know where Nalgene's are made. But you get a chance to kind of talk them through your process and the things that happen. So there may still be a write-up that they're reading over while you're talking, but are you in favor of formats like that over what I'll describe as the more traditional turn a piece in and walk away for 3 hours tournament?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I right now I'm regent of the park that I go to. I am trying right now to kind of do a dry run of what I'd like to do when I take up Kingdom Regent next. So I'm trying to host, and I would love to do a show and tell based ANS competition where everyone has one item and you get to present that item and stand up there like the 4-year-old that we all are at heart and be all like, this is my rack. I love my rack. But the type of tournaments that I'm trying to do in order to like open up the whole judging and like, you see sometimes where someone comes in and they have exactly 3 items because they worked for all 6 months on these 3 items and they look phenomenal. And then you have someone else come in with like 80 items and they just take 3 tables, put them together, have everything lined up, have like a novella typed up for every single piece. And it's everything they've done for like the last 3 years. And there's no re-entries, but they end up winning because they have the higher amount. They average out easier, shit like that. And so I'm so tired. And that's what we have a lot here in CK. Is that people will come in. We've got a lot of people that stay at home. We've got a lot of people that have like 3D printers, laser cutters, stuff like that. And so they're able to bust out a whole lot of work really fast. But there's a lot of us in between who, you know, I do everything by hand. I don't have that shit because I still need to pay off my car or something like that. And so I want to do ANS competitions where everyone gets one item. You get to, and it's all off of the same prompt. And so the one that I'm running right now is a warrior's victory. Create something in a medium of your choice, original, that shows a warrior's victory or has the spirit of a warrior's victory. And it's completely open like that. And then we judge based off of how obvious that is through the piece. And yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do.
We've tried themed competitions and stuff, and they've typically gone over not quite very well, but I think that has a much higher chance to be better off than like, oh, it's a Harry Potter theme.
Yeah, that's a prompt, not a theme.
Yeah, right. And I like the idea of the prompt much better.
Yeah.
Because like my theorized thing of the format was kind of the best of the best or whatever kind of format is what was Neverwinter called it, and we kind of stole was the one entry kind of deal. They didn't do prompts. They did I think you had like 5 or 10 minutes, and you had a scheduled time to come in to do your 5 or 10 minutes, and then judges could ask questions and things like that too. That way, like, people, so there's a lot of like older Amtgarders who judge and see that it's not French themed or something like that, right? And then, oh, it's not a finished theme.
Right there with you.
Can I spend all 15 minutes explaining why the French theme is bullshit?
Right. So some of it is just trying to figure out what is a better judging format in some ways. Rubrics seem to me not great in a way. So that's interesting because like
rubrics only work for a specific medium, right?
Right. Because I always bring up like my grandmother did stained glass, and I know a little bit, and I just haven't gotten around to actually entering anything yet. But I bet there's one, maybe two other people who have even really seen handmade stained glass stuff in the kingdom. And yeah, you guys have much more history to deal with that kind of stuff, really. And I don't remember, is Scry CK? No, she's... I don't remember. I think she's Sir Scry now, but she brought stained glass stuff to ANS Symposium one year. And, you know, it's interesting because you get people who think they know what they're talking about, and then if you go, hey, you know, I did it this way because of this X reason, and this is a like traditional way to do it kind of deal, then you get a little more leeway in your presentation to bring that to light and not just be like, here it is, you know. So, I mean, you can argue with the write-ups type thing, but that becomes another art form you have to master if you're gonna.
I fucking hate
it. I know I do too. I can't stand them.
Write-ups are only necessary if it's a fucking recipe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like it's a weird thing because there's a lot of good in some of the things that people hold dear of yesteryear, basically, but there's also a lot of bad to it, and we need to figure out like where it really needs to sit.
Yeah. So I want to give you a chance to brag for just a minute, and also I kind of want to hear some of the work that you've done. So tell us about your biggest or most complicated piece, your favorite piece, and then the piece you hated the most.
Ooh.
Well, I think a lot of the stuff that I do nowadays, this is my biggest and most complicated piece. A lot of the stuff that I do nowadays and have done for, I guess, the longest amount of time has been digital artwork. When I was 17, my parents for Christmas got me they got me a little Wacom Cintiq, little mouse pad thing. And I used that until probably like last year. And then I upgraded to an iPad. And I've been doodling on that every single day. But I think the biggest, most complicated piece was when I was in college. I was commissioned to do I did a logo I did a document design. I did like 15 things for a Holocaust remembrance and restitution organization.
Oh, that's really cool.
And it's not Amtgard related, but I learned some Hebrew because all Hebrew generators generate it both backwards, and then all the letters are backwards. So I had to just write it out myself, and I had to learn how to do that. And a little bit of sacrilege in there of like, you know, but that was probably my most complicated piece because it took me about 1.5 years to actually get all of that done. And then the second was
your favorite piece? Yeah.
Honestly, some of my favorite pieces have been my weird, some of the weird artwork I've done. Like I did, and this has all been rather recent. I did for the next time that I'm king, I really want to do a like, what's the word? Inquisition based reign where like the Inquisition of the Church of Cod is coming in, and we're making all magic that's not through the church illegal and stuff like that. And so I created like I created a big banner or like a poster. It looks really fucking cool. I love it to bits and pieces. Then I created a little priest fish guy, brother of trout. I created a swordfish, sword knight. I did like a bunch of other things. And I've also made like a Templar frog, a Templar bull, like all of these little guys that I've made. They're my favorite. They don't get hardly any likes on Instagram, but I love them to bits and pieces.
That sounds awesome.
That's so good. Are these, so it sounds like some of these are made out of like pottery or clay, or like how are these created?
No, all of it's digital.
Okay, that's super cool.
Yeah.
If you want, we can drop a link to the Instagram and the links in the comments below if you want us to drive people there. I mean, it's up to you. We don't want to do that. So, okay, your most hated piece, or I guess maybe I should say the piece that you struggled with the most.
I think I can get it real quick.
Oh boy,
yeah,
one sec.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Man, I know that my favorite piece thing that I made was the foam helmet.
The gladiator one?
Yeah, the gladiator helmet.
That thing's dope.
Yeah, like it was hard to do the brim. That was kind of hard. The rest of it wasn't too bad, but it's probably not the most like technical good piece that I've ever done.
I think that's one of those things where if you point out all the flaws in something, you know, it's easier to realize. But like that thing looks amazing to me.
Yeah.
All right, let's see it.
So I worked on this. I haven't worked on it in about 3 years now. I worked on this every single night for months, and this was when I was on a huge painting kick. Okay. And it is of Father Tom. Oh. And it is of him riding horseback, and there's supposed to be a bunch of like dead bodies and skeletons and stuff. And there's a ton of detail on it.
Shit. Yeah.
In fact, there's too much. And I realized that I made the horse look a little too much like The Last Unicorn, and I've not been able to unsee it.
Oh no.
I fucking hate this piece.
I like it, but okay, fair.
I hate it so much. I may finish it at some point, but it's been sitting, like, I have so many canvases that I've, like, painted something on. I'm like, no. And so I just paint over it. And this one has gone through that process so many times of, like, am I going to repaint it? No, I'll finish it someday.
Fair enough.
It's constantly been put on the back burner.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, it's better than anything I could ever do, and I like it. I'd put it above the mantelpiece. But I could also lean into the Last Unicorn thing just fine. It wouldn't bother me. So I was going to ask, and you had mentioned you're drawing on an iPad now. So what is your view on digital art? And in general, because I know digital art, especially like Procreate, gives you so many aids that you would not normally have. So like digital artwork, but also things like 3D printers and laser cutters and stuff like that. Are those something that cheapens the process, or do you think there's something that is just an augment?
It's a new way of doing the thing that you've always done. So my mom was an art teacher. I grew up from day one holding a pencil, probably like day 3 holding a pencil. I have always been drawing. When people ask me how long it's taken me to get to where I'm at, 26 years.
Right.
But it's not a wrong answer. I've drawn almost every single day that I've been alive.
Mhm.
So having the ability to not have to run to the fucking store to go get another sketchbook, or not being yelled at by my mom of taking more printer paper out of the printer, not ruining these crappy little Micron pens, not having to worry about getting Prismacolors versus, just the crappy brand. Like it's all of these things that you just don't have to worry about anymore. I've started doing some 3D sculpting, and I've done actual sculpting, I've done pottery, I've done painting, I've done printmaking, all of these things, and I've done them all physically.
Yeah.
And now that more and more options are opening up digitally, I'm starting to do them digitally, and it's Procreate. You said something a little wrong there earlier,
Okay.
and I'm correct you. Procreate is not easier. there are aids to it that, like, oh, I don't like the shape of that hand, I'm gonna mess around with it in futs. But everything is pixelated, and everything will smudge, and everything will ruin itself, whereas a pen and paper is straightforward.
Fair.
With digital sculpting, like, you have to have a lot of technical know-how of, like, the texture on this is way too high. I need to rough it in by putting it into like 16-bit, and then I have to do all of this jazz and whatnot. And eventually it'll crash, and I have to start all fucking over again. You know what never crashes? Pen and paper. A piece of clay. Well, no, that's not true. Pieces of clay do crash, and it's really sad. But those things don't crash, and it's a big learning curve. I don't like the idea to tie it back into like 3D printing and does it cheapen the process and stuff like that. I don't like the idea of people, just going online, downloading an STL file and printing off, I printed off this dragon and I painted it all green. Isn't this marvelous? And it's like, okay, cool, dude. But like, you didn't make it.
Yeah.
You had a $3,000 machine that just for like 4 hours, and suddenly it's there. Like, I think that those sort of people are the same kind that would go to the grocery store, buy a cake, take the label off, and say, "I made this."
Right.
So, I have no doubt that they exist, but I also have no doubt that they're not going to get where they want to go.
Yeah.
That's fair. And I'm okay with being wrong about Procreate. I have not an artistic bone in my body. I once bought one of those foam circles and was like, I'm going to make a skull. And I shit you not, I made a triangle. Don't know what went wrong. I just kept chiseling away, and not a pyramid, mind you, a 3-dimensional, just a triangle. Just like, don't know what I did wrong. I gave up.
Oh, man.
Sorry, did you have something?
Yeah, as soon as you asked me, it left. So go ahead.
I'm good at that. So I want to transition just away from the whole Serpent Path thing for a bit, because I know we've talked about that quite a bit. What else in Amthgard draws you out on any given day? Do you have like a favorite class, a favorite type of game? Is there something about events that draws you out, or is it strictly the ANS that keeps you coming back?
Well, I love playing the game. I love fighting. I'm learning to love to fight in tournaments. Trying to be one of the first, 5 or 10 female sword knights is definitely a grind.
Right.
And so having to go out, having to fight, having to spar, having to pull people aside and pick their brains on stuff that I know nothing about, and they have 20 plus years of experience about. So that's always fun.
Right.
But the thing that keeps me coming back out is seeing my friends and getting to be a big ass kid with them. Just getting to run around and play stick tag, getting to run around and play, I pretend that you stop. And then and then like just doing that and getting to see them all at events and getting to, fool around, get drunk. And I don't know, just participate in what everybody made fun of us for, but now they secretly all want to do.
Yep.
Right.
So you touch on something interesting there. You said you want to become one of the first, 5 to 10 female sword knights. Where are you at in that journey so far?
I am at 5 Orders of the Warrior.
You're ahead of me. So there's a lot of discussion about, like, should we split this off between, like, a gendered path, like female sword knight, male sword knight, different tourneys. Where do you stand on that?
I stand on a firm dark gray.
Okay.
I have put it to many a person like this. If it was just so damn easy for women to get knighted, why is Boots the only one?
Yeah.
Why is she the only sword knight? If we should keep doing what we're doing right now, why aren't there more women with their 10th order? Why aren't there more women with their 7th order? Like, why are we in the boat that we're in right now? And then on the opposite side, I think that because it's been proposed before, I think that the Orders of the Valkyrie or the Knight of the Valkyrie is the most. It feels like someone's talking down to me.
Yeah, it's like a separate but equal argument.
It's like, okay, cool. In the 1950s, I would go to medical, or a woman would go to medical school, a guy would go to medical school, take the same fucking classes.
Yep.
She'd come out a nurse, he'd come out a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
No men were ever nurses, no women were ever doctors.
Yeah.
And so it was, a nurse is always shat upon, but a doctor's like, oh,
yeah,
look at
doctor, yes.
And so I don't see that that's fair. And a lot of people are like, oh, but a guy will never get it. I'm like, yeah, cool. A guy will never get it, but I'll never get Sword Knight. Like, doesn't make sense.
I'm definitely, I think, with you that if we do split, and I think I'm definitely on the splitting kind of route, then it's just still Knight of the Sword. That's it.
Oh, yeah. I think that splitting it, I mean, at this point, I feel like it's the only way to go. And
I think the data backs you up on that.
Yeah, it's the only way to go. I mean, there's no other female sword knights besides Boots, and she got it. I've heard a lot of shit talk. I've heard a lot of praise, what have you. Mm-hmm. She got it in, what was it, the 90s or like the late 80s?
Yeah. Yeah, it was prior to standardization, so.
Way back then.
Yeah. Well,
and we are in the now, and nobody has gotten it since. And so with the stick tag getting faster and faster and everything getting more and more technical, and people deciding when to call shots, when not to call shots, like things are getting muddier and muddier and yet more refined, and yet we're not keeping up with that. We're turning it into a sport, but saying it's still a hobby.
Yes.
And yet everybody who's a warlord or who competes in these tournaments and who wins, they're treated like, the Olympic athlete. Oh my God, that guy fucking won. That's awesome. I understand. And I think that it should be the same for women.
100%.
And I feel like we need to, if we're going to treat it like a sport, split them off. Like have women's tournaments, men's tournaments, everybody else in between tournaments. Like if you want to fight in the open brackets, go for it. If you want to fight in woman, gotta want to be a man fighter, fight in the men's. Like, I don't know. I can see where it can get fuzzy for some people, but I feel like that's where things need to go in order to make the headway that everybody wants to see and yet doesn't want to do the footwork for. And I also understand that in that the first handful of women sword knights that would come out of that are going to be talked down about. Like it's going to happen regardless. Oh, you got it in women's tournaments? Go fight a man. Or like, you didn't get it in an open tournament? Go fight in an open tournament. See if you get the same thing.
Yeah, first
or
off,
like
fuck
the
those
big
people.
hoity-toity warlords are going to go up there and be all like, well, you didn't beat me, so you don't deserve it.
Well, to add some fuel to your argument here, right? We just mentioned that Sir Boots is the only female sword knight, and they got it when there was no separated tournaments, and they still get shit talked about them. So you're going to get shit talked about you either way because people are sexist and assholes, so fuck them. Just do the right thing and let those people be assholes. But there's also the whole argument of like, oh, well, if we do, separated tournaments, how do we take care of the issues where like, a female sword knight stands up next to a male sword knight? Who fucking cares? Who gives a shit?
Yeah, this isn't addressed in anything else. Like we don't say, I know that college sports is a little different here in its original founding, right? But no one says, well, what happens when the point guard for the women's basketball team that won last season and the point guard for the men's basketball team that won last season stand side by side? Well, then both get claps. Like I don't understand the premise of your question.
Well, and another thing too. I guess when this episode comes out, it will be 2 weeks ago. we talked with the AI folks. We talked with the XCOM chair, and we talked with one of the board members of AI. I think it's actually the president of the board, not 100% on that. But we talked with them, and they said that, Amped Guard is a sport. That's how we're pitching it to people. So to, again, lend further fuel to your argument there, we keep talking about it as a hobby. This is a sport. The fighting portion of this especially is a sport.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, just look at Smiley's swords. They're like $50, $60 a sword. It's also $50, $60 an item. Baseball bats, lacrosse gloves, lacrosse sticks, like swimsuits. I was a swimmer in high school. I was a championship level swimmer. A top barrel, bottom of it. I was really good. I wasn't Olympic bound, but I was college athlete bound.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a completely different feel here because no one wants to accept that we're competing. This is a sport. Like
right.
you're not fighting. You're not on a team when you're in a tournament. You are yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to push yourself. You have to train. You have to get better in order to do whatever. And everyone's all like, no, but we're cool. We use swords and shields and spears and we throw magic missiles and shit. Like, it's like, no, man, you're a fucking nerd. Like,
Yeah.
A sword knight is just the biggest nerd, if you think about it. So how much of the, and I'm going to change topic real quick here, how much of the, like, you being a fantastic swimmer lent into your persona name, Fish? Was there a tie-in at all, or was it just something you picked?
That was about 50% of it.
Oh.
On my original sign-in sheet, on the first thing I ever signed, where I got to pick my name,
you got to pick?
choose my opening Pokemon, all that jazz. Like when I got to choose how I wanted to start, I wrote down about 7 names, and they were all old D&D character names. And the pen was running out of ink, and I was sitting there having to, I was writing, and I was getting more, it was worse and worse and worse. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. My dad was a sailor. My dad was a swimmer. My mom and dad met while sailing. They lived by the coast for a long time. I've been swimming almost every single weekend of my life. When I got into swim team, like, I was always swimming. And the other thing was that I work conventions, and my moniker is a fish hat, where it's like the arrowhead, but it's a fish going through my head.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm Fish. And it has worked. In fact, to the point where I had, I would have so many people who knew me as Fish that, college professors would start calling me Fish in the middle of class. They'd see me pop up on Facebook, or like other people who, like, I would take professors, or I would take the class out to Amped Guard, get my Zodiac or whatever. And they just started calling me Fish. And toward the end of college, when I was in my capstone class, like, the teacher was like, oh, Miss Fish Sherman. And I was like, oh, that's me. Hey, what's up?
Sherman. Hold on. I wasn't ready. Go ahead.
Well, that was it. And so my old way of telling people to remember my name, which is Rebecca Sherman, was it's like Sherman, like in Finding Nemo, like P. Sherman 42 Waldway Sydney, and now it's a Fish Sherman 42 Waldway Sydney.
Nice.
Perfect. So we're coming up on the time, sort of the portion of the show where we ask you to tell a fun, crazy, your most epic Amped Guard story. That is legal to tell. Got to be careful. Before we get to that, though, I wanted to just offer you up the free space to, is there anything that you would want to impart to our listeners, whether they're choosing a Serpent Path, or any advice you've gleaned in Amped Guard over the past 8 or so years that might be particularly powerful for them?
I guess the biggest thing is, if you can't beat someone, if you're not, if you can't bring the wallet to match their wallet to the game, if you can't bring the attitude to match their attitude in the game, if you're not as good of a fighter, if you're not as good of an artist, if you're not as good as a whatever, don't try to beat them. Just do better in yourself. Don't focus on other people to base who you are off of. I guess that's one thing of advice. Another is, if you find that everybody around you is saying yes, go try and find one person to say no. Yeah. If you find that everybody around you is like, oh, the color blue, It's fucking awesome. I love the color blue. Oh, it's so amazing. Go find someone who likes red. Go find someone who likes purple. Like, go find someone who is going to help open up your mindset a little bit. It doesn't have to be too drastic. Doesn't have to be too minimal. Just whatever you're comfortable with. Just try and do that, so that, because it's something that I've been seeing a lot in Amped Guard nowadays, is that everybody is clicking up really hard. And as someone who was really deep in an echo chamber and then got out of it, it's so refreshing to hear other people's points of view. And I think the last thing that I could impart is that if you ever try to take up a kingdom level office or an international level office, have your life put together. Don't have the mid-reign be right when your rent is going to be up. Don't have any tumultuous relationships ready to explode. Shed all of your friends that are just shitty to you. Just delete their numbers. Make sure that when you go home, that when you turn off the phone, you turn off the computer, you skip a day at park, make sure that when you do that, the world is not crashing down around you when that happens. Because each time I've taken office first time was when I was in college, and that didn't go well because I skipped class to go do Amped Guard stuff, and I skipped Amped Guard to go do class stuff. And then when I was king, I had to move twice, and that was hell in a handbasket. So make sure that you have your life put together.
Yeah. Where were you 2 years ago? I could have used that then.
Yeah. Well,
so
hindsight.
So right, yeah. So the time is now. Fun, crazy, epic, awesome Amped Guard story from the past, that you want to dredge up and tell everybody, share with our listeners here.
Okay. So this was a little bit of background. I am in two companies. I'm in the Legion of the Black Cross. They're really big in the Golden Plains and EH, and we're starting to expand down into the Celestial Kingdom. Oh, wow. I just got my full membership this last Spring War, the night after my knighting. So yeah, that's a fun.
Nice.
I love them to bits and pieces. And the other company that I'm in is Prohibition. We are a company that, alcohol is the worst thing on earth. And we, as stated by MHOG, are the best team players, and we are the most battlefield effective team at Spring War. And so for the more we drink, the less there is. We take one for the team and rid the world of alcohol one bottle at a time. So keeping that one in mind, I had just gotten fully initiated in. It was Friday night of Spring War, and we were gearing up and ready to go. This was, I think, Spring War 25, gearing up and ready to go. And it was the next morning, and I was really nursing the hair of the dog. And I play healer. I play warder specifically, and I don't take any weapons. I go pacifistic, and I just take resurrections and enchantments and do all of that jazz. So it was me and my two other brothers in the company, and we were fucking fighting. And they were playing monks, and they both had a 10-foot pole and a short sword. And so we were going through, and part of the game, the game that we were playing was that we had to break through these gates, and we single-handedly held off for about 15 minutes in this massive game. We single-handedly held that gate because I had fallen back in between hay bales, and I had a hand on one and a foot on the other. And anytime they died, I would res them. And I was doing the refresh charge every single time that I had a moment to breathe. And they wouldn't move their feet. And so I could resurrect. And it took the enemy team, we were fighting over this door, it took the enemy team about 15 minutes to finally notice that I was in there, because they saw my foot sticking out. And it was one of the most glorious times I've ever had. And I remember getting patted on the back very firmly by many, many people who were just like, "You fucking did it. You were MVP, blah, blah, blah."
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. If there's anything that you want us to put in the show notes down below, just go ahead and send that to one of us. We'll get it in the show when it goes up. If you want to share that Instagram or any photos of your art, anything like that. Flo, anything before we roll this outro?
Yeah, so two things. First, if I was going to be visiting the CK and I could only come for one event, What event should I come for?
That's a good question.
Spring War, but make sure that you bring lots of water. And honestly, I would say that you should get a hotel offsite, because though it is hot during the day, it gets ass freezing cold at night.
I like that last part that you said.
Flo's going to get a hotel for during the day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I want to do is, as always, thank you so much to our Patreons and everyone who supports the show in any way. If you'd like to support the show, links will be down in the description. One of the best ways you can support us is just to click that subscribe button, like and share our videos. It really does help us with YouTube's dreaded algorithm. Fish, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or Spotify to get notified about new episodes. And make sure to follow us on Facebook for announcements and more.